Fifth Hour Radio Show.
Pam, when did you first get the interest in wanting to write books, and more specific, romance novels?
Well, I've always written. I'm one of those kids that wrote short stories when I was a little girl. And honestly, when I went for my first teaching interview back when I was 22 years old, the superintendent was interviewing me for this teaching job, and he asked me what I wanted to be doing 40 years from then. And I told him I hoped that I had written a great American novel. So I probably should have told him I would like to still be teaching, but instead I told him that I'd rather be writing. So I got the job anyway. But writing has just been a passion of mine, I think, my whole life. I decided to go into the romance genre after my first book came out, which was a fantasy, a romantic fantasy. And everybody told me that I seemed to have a voice for romance. So I decided to try my hand at it, and I love it.
Now, let's get this out of the way. What exactly is a romance novel for all the guys out there?
A romance novel is a novel that is focused on a romantic relationship, and that is the main plot of the story, is this relationship. Now, you can have other subplots, but the romance is the focus of the book, the focus of the story, and it's only a romance if it has a happily ever after ending.
How do you get your inspiration for doing this? I mean, when you're writing these stories, where do you pull the inspiration from?
Oh, it's so weird. I talk to people all the time about how did you meet, where did you meet your husband, where did you meet your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, what about him appeals to you most. I'm always asking questions, and I'm always watching people. I like to just sit and watch people and try to make up a story about a couple if I see them on the street holding hands or whatever. And inspiration comes from a lot of different places. I'll hear something that just sticks with me, maybe on the news, and a story will start developing in my mind. So you never know where it's going to come from. It just sort of strikes out of the blue. That really is true. I had always heard that, but it really is true. Just, wow, sometimes it's just there.
Do any of your stories have real counterparts?
Yeah.
Putting you on the spot.
Well, it's just that a lot of my characters are very loosely based on people I have known. And so they inspire me too, especially the quirky characters. They're usually based on somebody in my life that I've come into contact with. Of course, I always exaggerate the quirkiness, but yeah, a lot
and
of
just change the names.
Exactly, to protect the innocent.
Yeah. Now, does being a romance novelist put an added weight on your husband? I mean, you think about romance all the time. Now, you don't expect him to come home every night and be, Fabio, right?
Well, of course I do. I mean, that's the reason I married him, right? I think it puts I tell him that I'm making him a legend in his own time because his buddies read my books. Some of them do. And so one of them said it very aptly the other day. He said, the first couple of books, I thought that was you. But by the time I got to the third one, I decided you didn't know that much.
Now, what sparked your interest in writing your first full-length novel? Did it start off as something you were just doing for yourself, or did you plan on having it published from the onset?
I did not plan on having it published. My husband and I had gone on this trip, just a vacation to England. I've always been a big King Arthur fan. And so we took this vacation in England, and I dragged him all over England to all these different Arthurian sites. And as I went to all of these sites, and I always keep a journal when I'm traveling, I was writing notes down. And when we got home, I told him, I said, I've got an idea for a book. And so I sat, he kind of rolled his eyes. And so I sat down like the next day and started on it. It took me about 6 months to write it. And then I got it done, and I just sort of put it away. I told him, I said, one of these days we're going to have grandkids, and this will just be something that I can show them that Grandma did. And he decided he wanted to read it. So after he read it, he told me, he said, this is pretty good. You've worked so hard on it. Why don't you see about having it published? And publishing didn't come too terribly easily. I got 26 rejections on that book. Yeah, before it finally sold. But then by the time that happened, it was just so ingrained in me and so much in my blood that I just wanted to keep going. So I've just been writing ever since. That was actually like 15 years ago that I first started that first book.
Now, what was the title of that first book?
The first book is called The Timestone Key. It's a romantic fantasy about King Arthur. It's about a present-day woman who goes in search of King Arthur. So it's kind of a time travel thing. It's just a lot of fun. It does have a little bit of romance in it, although the main plot is not a romance in it. But there is a happily ever after, and it was a fun book to write. That one was with Lyrical Press, which is a small independent publisher, for several years. And then my contract with them finally ran out. And so since then, I have self-published it on Amazon.
Talking about the writing process again, when you write a story, do you unveil your stuff to friends and family first before you try to get it published, or do you just surprise them after the book's published?
Usually they don't read it until after it comes out. Now, if there's anything that I think they need to know, of course I would tell them. But as far as using family as like beta readers, I don't do that. I have 5 critique partners, and we exchange chapters. And so my book is actually read by 5 other pairs of eyes before I send it in. And then my agent reads it, my editor reads it, and my husband reads it. So it has quite a few people looking at it before it finally becomes the final product.
Now, how did the contract with Harlequin come about?
Oh, that was so exciting. I got an agent after my second book, and she was just sure that she could sell this book that I had written, and I specifically wanted Harlequin. They are the name the biggest name in romance, and so that's who we were targeting. But Harlequin has 17 different lines, and the line that we sent it to rejected it. So I was sitting on the beach one day down in Florida with a friend of mine, and she was asking me about the book, and my agent was getting pretty frustrated by this time. Well, as I was talking to this friend, I was telling her about it, and she said, that sounds like a Harlequin super romance. Well, the super romance line was a line that I had never read. And so as I went back home that evening, I stopped at Walmart, and I bought all of their super romances, and I went home and I started reading them. And as I read them, I realized this was my story. This is exactly where my story fit. And so I called my agent and I said, we haven't tried Harlequin super romance, and I think that that's the line where I need to be. Well, she submitted it to super romance, and 3 years ago, the day before Thanksgiving, they called her and offered a contract.
Now, what book was that?
And that's the one that came out August of 2012, and the name of it is Out of the Depths.
So that's the book that kind of puts you on the map, so to speak.
Yeah, it is. I was a Rita finalist for that book this year at the RWA conference down in Atlanta. And the Rita Awards is what we say, we romance writers say, is like the Academy Awards of romance writing. Mm-hmm. And I was one of 7 finalists in the long category series. So that was really exciting. And that was my first book with Harlequin. Since then, I've had another one come out. It came out in April of 2013. I have another one coming out in February. And then I also have signed a 4-book contract with them so I'll have 4 more coming out over the next 2 years.
So you're just spitting these books out left and right.
Well, it takes me about 6 months, but yeah, I spit them out in about 6 months.
Now, what was it about? Now, Out of the Depths, what was it about that book that got everyone's attention?
You know, that one, everybody always says, write what you know. My hometown is Paducah, Kentucky, and that one is set in Paducah, Kentucky. And I think I just finally really found my niche in writing. I found that writing about places that I know and setting it with a real homesy voice was the key. And so the second book is not exactly a sequel, but The Summer Place takes one of the secondary characters from Out of the Depths, and he becomes the primary character in The Summer Place. And then the same thing, Moonlight in Paris, which is coming out in February, the heroine of that story was a secondary character in The Summer Place. And although that one is set in Paris, the subplot of it is set in Western Kentucky. The Summer Place is set in Western Kentucky. So I'm just writing about the places that I love, and I think that comes out in the writing.
Now, do you enjoy the traveling, the book signings, public speaking that goes along with being an author?
No, I'm a terrible public speaker.
I didn't expect that answer.
I'm absolutely petrified. I mean, it's okay because I'm sitting here talking and I'm the only one here. I can't see anyone else. But put me in front of an audience and I'm terrible. I'm very introverted, and it's one of my worst fears is being in front of people. So no. And book signings aren't too bad. Actually, you don't get to do those as often as most people think, unless you're somebody huge like Nora Roberts. But they're fun because the people who come up and talk to you obviously like your book, and it's always good to hear that people like your book. But it's a little intimidating.
Well, writing a book seems like it would be a very complicated task. Do you start with the story finished in your mind and then just write it down, or do you invent as you go?
No, I invent as I go. I usually have an idea of my characters and how it's going to start and sort of how it's going to end. But that middle part, I just actually kind of put the characters into the situation and then see how they react and let them carry the story. There are a lot of times that I've been writing and I actually had an idea that a story was going to go a certain way, but the characters didn't allow it to go that way. And it always surprises me, but it happens. In The Summer Place, it took me, maybe I shouldn't say this on the radio, but it took me forever to get those two to sleep together.
Oh, my goodness.
It was like, come on,
were
guys.
They not meant to be?
Did you have to write in a bottle of wine or?
Well, I kept thinking, come on, it's going to happen. This is going to be the scene. And then it wasn't. It just, it just wasn't the right time for them. And they let me know it. So, but it did finally happen.
Yeah. Outside of writing, how do you enjoy spending your day? Do you have any hobbies or TV shows you enjoy? Or
Well, I have 2 grandsons, and I do spend a lot of time with them. And I watch TV at night. I love How I Met Your Mother and The Big Bang Theory, and we've gotten into a lot of the series. I love Game of Thrones. That's my favorite. Mm-hmm. And I love Downton Abbey. That's another favorite. My husband is big into Breaking Bad, and that one I just cannot tolerate. There's too much violence in that. I want my happily ever after, and I don't think that one's going to end.
So you're not a big Walking Dead fan?
No.
So how has all this success, with your writing, changed your life, or has it in any way?
It really hasn't. It just keeps me busier, I think. Last year on Facebook one day, someone posted, being a writer is like giving yourself really hard homework every night for the rest of your life. And that's it. I get up first thing in the morning and write, and I usually write for a few hours in the morning, and then the rest of my day is just whatever I want to do. But I pretty much do that every day unless we've got something major going on. So in that way it's changed because I saw myself as a retired teacher just having all this free time, and really I don't have all that much free time because I spend a big chunk of it writing.
Now, you're talking about getting up every morning and writing. Do you have any writing rituals that you do before you get going on your typing?
No, just a cup of coffee. Just a cup of coffee. Yeah, that is the necessary thing to have in my hand.
Well, Pam, let our listeners know where they can go as far as website and social media to get more information about you and how to purchase your books.
My website is www.PamelaHearon.com, and that is PamelaHearon. That's my maiden name, and it's a difficult spelling. It's like the bird, but with an A in it, Hearon. And then I'm at Harlequin. I'm at Amazon. So I'm on Facebook. So I'm just kind of
just Google Pamela Hearon.
Yeah, exactly. I'm on Twitter, but honestly, I've never figured out how to tweet very well, so I'm kind of intimidated by that, so I don't do that very often.
Well, Pam, thank you very much for joining us today on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to get to talk to you after all these years, and we wish you the best in everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And best wishes on your continued success, too. Y'all are doing a great job.
Thank you.
The 25th Hour Radio Show.